for Kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedlie, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Jedlie Magic on Twitter, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram. Our guest today is Alexis Marie Chute. She's the author of the 8th Island Trilogy. Joining us on the line right now from Edmonton and Alberta, Canada. She is the author of the 8th Island Trilogy series. Please welcome to the show, Alexis Marie Chute. Alexis, how are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Please tell us about the 8th Island Trilogies.
Well, the 8th Island Trilogy is all about, it's a portal fantasy. So it's a subgenre of fantasy, and portal fantasy is all about people starting in our world and getting transported to a magical world. And so the three main characters in the series are Grandpa Archie, his daughter-in-law Tessa, and his granddaughter Ella. And Ella is 14 years old when the series starts. She has cancer and can't speak. And Grandpa Archie is in search of his missing son and also trying to find a cure for Ella. And Grandpa Archie, he's kind of a frumpy, klutzy senior citizen, and he accidentally transports his family and a whole cruise ship full of people to the magical island of Jarwaya. And there they have adventures, there's mystery, a little bit of romance, but the heart of the story is that all the worlds, Earth, Jarwaya, all the worlds are dying, and Ella, this little girl, somehow holds the key to saving the worlds, and her family have to join with all these magical creatures to try to save everyone, and it's a really exciting, adventuresome, and yet heartwarming story of family amidst magic and cool experiences that they have together.
Wow, this sounds really, really cool. I love that you're one of your main characters is a clumsy old man like myself, and that's great.
That's awesome.
and that I find, these being transported into different worlds, it is such a it's a really fun ride, and it's something that the kids love to do. You were mentioning that this is a book that you think it would be fun for kids from 5th grade up until age 60 and beyond, like me.
Yeah. Well, really, it's so cool because I get feedback from readers of all ages, and older readers will often relate to Grandpa Archie, and parents will relate to Tessa and her husband Arden, and some of the other characters who sort of middle age. And then all the teens that read the book, they obviously associate themselves with Ella. So it's so cool that there's so many different entry points for readers. And something that's cool about this series is that I think it's more geared for young adults or those people who love more young adult type of fiction. But it also has like the whole family perspectives. So it's really a refreshing take on multiple points of view within one story.
One of the things that I love about this is the same thing I love about the Phyllis Wong series, which is written by my friend Jeffrey McSkimming, is that it does feature some really beautiful relationships between generations. I think that that's something that's really missing these days, is just the acknowledgement that we are family. We should be able to get along together. We do look at the world differently, but that doesn't mean that we can't still have a loving bond together.
I think you're totally right. Like, I really love reading, like, young adult books, for example, and so many of them, like, the parents play such a small role in it. And I know that, like, I do a lot of research into teens and mental health and using creativity for healing and mental health and self-care. But it's really interesting that, like, so many fictional books, it's almost like the parents don't even exist, right? And the kids are navigating their adolescent journey all by themselves. And yet I do think that the role of family is so critical. And, like, even with raising my own kids, I just see that the dynamics are so important. And that's something that I really wanted to bring together in this book. The family is dysfunctional. Like, it's definitely not, easy peasy. Like, there is separated parents. There's illness. Grandpa Archie comes and lives with his family, his son's family, after his wife dies. And so there's grief mixed into it. So there's so many different dynamics, and yet I think what I hope people will get out of my series is that, even amidst all these personal struggles, the bond between family and the love, that's really what gives us the strength we need to overcome all these obstacles and stick together and see the good in each other. And that's powerful. That's a powerful message.
It really is a powerful message, and it's really important too. I think we went through a long stretch. When I was a kid, everything was rosy, and there was a famous TV show in the 50s and early 60s, Ozzie and Harriet, and it just depicted this perfect family, and nothing was ever wrong. No one ever died. No one ever got sick. No one ever argued with each other. And that certainly wasn't realistic. And then we went to the other end of the pendulum where, every family's terrible and families are toxic, and get away from that. The bond that exists between kids and parents, it's so strong. Before I got into performing, before I was a podcaster, I was in human services, and we would be working with kids who came from horrendous situations of abuse. They wanted more than anything to get back with their families, get back with, to where they were being hurt. They didn't want to be hurt, but they just wanted that family unit to be healed. And it sounds like that's a spirit that's coming through your book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this has never even occurred to me until this moment, but I come from a family of divorce. And I remember for so many years when I was probably elementary school, maybe even junior high age, secretly wishing my parents would get back together. I have to say, I love my stepdad. He's been my stepdad for over 20 years. And so we have found peace in our family. But I feel like that longing is there for children, right? And it's powerful. And I think it's something that will play into our lives and our decisions as we grow older, like from adolescence up, and really affects who we become. So being cognizant of these sort of issues is empowering in a way.
And I love that there's so much. I mean, your Eighth Island Trilogy, there's a lot of meat there. Or I should say, there's a lot of protein there. I don't want to, there's a lot of non-meat eaters that listen. But there's a lot there to get into, and there's a lot to talk about. And I'm imagining, we encourage families to read together. And if not together on the couch, then, the Eighth Island Trilogy series sounds like a great book for families to co-read. And then to talk about on the way to soccer practice or ballet or around the dinner table, because there's so many things that they can talk about. And all these subjects are relevant in kids' lives, even if they don't know anybody if they don't have anybody in their family who's dealing with cancer. They know someone in their life, one of their friends, one of the friends' families dealing with cancer, and an elderly parent moving back in, or an elderly grandparent moving back in. That's happening all over the place, and so your kids know people that this is happening to, and they want to talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, and this is something that I love about fiction is it's almost like a back door into having these important conversations and getting kids to think about, what would I do in these real life situations, or what would I do? What kind of courage or bravery would I have inside myself if I had to engage in a battle with a magical race of creatures, right?
Mm-hmm,
And it makes us think about, like, would I be strong enough? How would I approach this situation if it was me? And that's one way that kids build resiliency, and they experience it's almost like risk-taking in proxy, right? They don't have to be in a dangerous situation, but they can think about how they would behave in the dangerous situation that's presented in the story, and in that way they can prepare themselves. They can work through, like, what would I do? How would I approach this? What creative tools would I come up with to make myself stronger? And that I think, just that thought process helps young people, helps all of us probably, to be more resilient in our lives, because it's easy to want to take the easy way out, right?
Yeah.
To put up our feet like Grandpa Archie did before he went into the magical world. He put up his feet, sat with his newspaper in his recliner, and just that's how he lived his life. He really sheltered himself. But by putting ourselves into the headspace of these challenges, some of them magical, some of them real domestic, we can become more brave. It's a really cool psychological process that we don't even know we're going through.
Yeah, it's a visualization. It's an important tool that lots of athletes use, lots of artists, lots of performers. You know, visualizing yourself as an athlete, visualizing yourself on the field, making that tackle, scoring that goal, visualizing, yourself on stage doing that perfect pirouette. And yeah, this is a great way for kids to kind of visualize themselves dealing with the difficult situations that they're going to encounter in life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
I want to get back to something you mentioned earlier, that the Eighth Island Trilogy series and other books that encourage creativity, and that creativity can be used for healing, especially healing our hurt mental health. Talk a little bit more about that, please.
Absolutely. So my first book, so the Eighth Island Trilogy, those are my books that come out after my first one. And my first book is very significant for me. It's called Expecting Sunshine, A Journey of Grief, Healing, and Pregnancy After Loss. So I wrote this book after one of my children passed away at birth. His name was Zachary. And my loss of him completely threw off my entire existence. I felt like I had failed as a mother, as a woman. I didn't know how to reorient myself after that. I just felt like a part of me was missing, and a part of me was. And I call that year after my loss my year of distraction. I did that. In that time, I did everything but face my grief. I worked like crazy. I took my one living child to every little kid activity I could find. I filled up every particle of the day with busyness so I didn't have to feel. And it was only when I got pregnant again with my next child that I was like, holy cow, if I don't face this grief head on, I'm going to carry it in a really negative, destructive way for the rest of my life. And I didn't want that for myself, and I didn't want that for my family, for my husband and my kids, my living kids. And that's when I really started to approach creativity, art and writing, music, even just drawing, as a way to just make peace, to have meditative, mindful presence in my life, and to face what I was going through. I've always been an artist and a writer. However, I've never thought about it in a healing, restorative way. And it wasn't like I did art therapy. I just sat down and I started to make wood sculptures. And I'm not predominantly a sculptor, but I found it very healing to be able to just work with my hands and create something. They were abstract sculptures. It wasn't like I was, trying to be intentional and be representative with my artwork, but I just allowed myself to be in the moment. And really what I realized is that sort of our logic brain, it really, in times of mental health struggles, conflict, bullying, grief, anything like in those headspaces, our logic brain tries to make sense of things. It tries to fix things. It tries to answer all the why questions. Why did this happen to me? Why my son? Why am I getting bullied? You know, all these things. Pardon me. And when we go into the creative headspace, our creativity processes our experiences in abstract ways through creative play. We come into like the childlike nature that looks at the world through a different lens than our logic brain. And in that way, for myself, I really was able to make peace with the mysterious aspects of life that we can't explain, that doesn't have answers. And I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders, and I was able to, I don't like the words moving forward as if we're leaving behind the person that we lost, in my case, my son, or leaving behind our difficult experiences, because I really do think that we carry forward our experiences, but we choose whether it's going to be positively manifested in our life moving forward or negatively manifested, right? And so I chose that in that creative headspace, I chose that I would embrace what I've been through and use it to help other people. And so that's really where my first book, Expecting Sunshine, came about, was through like taking my heartbreak and that time where I had to work through and face my grief and making it something beautiful. I often think of the Oriental vases that they get broken and then the artists fill in the cracks with gold. I'm not sure if you've seen that. But to me, there's a really powerful analogy, a visual analogy of what our lives can be like. And I think that creativity can be that gold that helps us fill in our brokenness, the broken places where we've been hurt and wounded and are grief-stricken, to make something beautiful of our lives. I think that's really one of my life philosophies, a life mantra, if you will.
Well, I think it's so important because I think a lot of folks, there are a number of things going on that I don't think are helpful. For one thing, there are a lot of parents out there who just want to protect their kids from everything. They don't want their kids to experience any kind of sadness or disappointment or failure, and so they really overprotect these kids. They don't want their kids. They don't want to talk to their kids about this stuff. They don't want their kids to experience it. I don't think that's helpful. And the other thing that goes on that I don't think
I agree.
The other thing that happens that I don't think is helpful is that something bad will happen to someone, and that defines them for the rest of their life. It's like, oh, you're a victim. And there's a lot of bad things that should never happen to anybody. But it doesn't mean that your life ends at that moment. You know, that's part of you and that shapes you. But we need to find ways to move forward. I love and I honor the fact that you remember Zachary. And he's still a part of your family, but you picked yourself up. You didn't let that stop Alexis, because you knew that Alexis had to carry on.
Absolutely. I totally agree with both of your points. So in our family, we've been very open with talking with our living kids about Zach and what happened with him in his short life. And I have seen my kids through that experience and through facing death. They've become so empathetic towards other children. So they can more easily sense when somebody is feeling down, if somebody else, one of their friends, has a loss in their family. My kids are just, they're more open to talking about it. And even how you're talking about not letting it define you, I really think that that's a choice as well. And it's not always an easy choice. I produced a documentary film called Expecting Sunshine as well, similar to the book. And in that, one bereaved mother talks about, she says she couldn't, she used to not be able to separate herself from her loss, but now she can, and it's a healing step to take. For quite some time after the loss, lots of people feel like they can't be happy, they can't laugh. A laugh is a betrayal of the grief that they should feel for that person that they've lost, and it becomes this difficult mix. But when we see that we can have a joyful life and also still remember that person, then it can become a healing path forward. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the people who have died would want us to be completely defined by that experience. Mm-hmm. Right? So
yeah, absolutely.
It's a powerful discussion that we're having.
Yeah. Well, it is. It is a powerful discussion, and I love that you're creating books that can inspire these kind of powerful discussions with our kids, because we're the people that, they're going to have these discussions with people in their lives. And, it would be wonderful if they could talk about this with us, with their parents, with the people who love them more than anything else in the world. You're involved in all sorts of fantastic creative, you're writing books, you're doing films. What other kind of creative things are you doing?
Well, I definitely have a long list of things that I do. And I think that's probably characteristic of many artists. We have our fingers in lots of pies, or another analogy, we wear lots of hats to try to do the creative work that we love. So I am a painter. I'm a fine art photographer. I also do art curation. So there's 2 different art spaces in my city, art galleries, where I curate, where I bring together the artwork of other people and present it in the gallery space. So I'm very passionate about supporting creative people, whether that's writers, photographers, painters, sculptors, filmmakers. To me, it's really important that we don't look at each other as competition, but that we build each other up. We can all support the creative work of each other, and by doing so, create a strong, vibrant community that's thriving. That's something that's super important to me. Even on my blog, for example, on my website, I have Artsy Mondays, where I feature different artists. I interview them, through a Q&A and share images of their work. I have Writer Wednesday, where I interview different authors. And then I have Film Fridays, where I've interviewed different filmmakers, and I talk about movies and the filmmaking journey. So I really try to support this community that I feel has supported me and, inspired me and been cheerleaders along my creative journey. So yeah, I have my fingers in a lot of different pies, but I do feel like I get inspired. I'm even taking a theater class where I'm learning more drama techniques. And so in that way I get to connect with other creative people as well. So yeah, it's a fun life, definitely. That's awesome.
Well, you mentioned your blog and your website. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find that?
Yeah, so my website is it's my name, Alexis Marie Chute, CHUTE.com. And then my blog, you can find it there. I also have my visual artwork up there. I have my documentary there. I have my info about my books, all kinds of stuff. I also make jewelry and candles. I just have a lot of fun with all kinds of creative expression. And my favorite social network is Instagram, and my handle is just my name, Alexis Marie Chute. And yeah, I'd love to connect with people and connect with your listeners.
That's awesome. Well, I am real excited. I'm really excited that we had a chance to talk about the 8th Island Trilogy. There's 3 books. Just remind everybody the titles of each book, please.
Absolutely. So book 1 is called Above the Star. Book 2 is Below the Moon. And book 3 is called Inside the Sun. And Inside the Sun is coming out in April, so just a few months from now.
So there's time for everybody to go out and get book 1 and book 2, and that way they'll be ready for book 3.
Exactly. Then you can binge them all together.
There you go. That's right. And I'm also real excited that you have your fingers in all these different pies, or your hats on all the different pies, because I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about some more creative things.
That'd be great. I'd be happy to do that.
We've been talking to the author of the 8th Island Trilogy and so much more, Alexis Marie Chute. Alexis, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.